Hello and welcome back to A Better World. This is your host, Mitchell J. Rabin, and I'm very glad you're joining us again today. Today we're going to have a very interesting show. We have invited back Anandagiri, who I originally met in Chennai at Golden City back in January of 2004, where I did my first series of interviews at Golden City with him as one of the leading students and disciples of Sri Bhagavan back then. And I did an entire series called the World Awakened series, based on the work that was going on in this particular community, which was really very beautiful and very heart-centered in very many ways. And as time has gone on, life has evolved. And we're today going to speak about some of that evolution from then and look at what Anandagiri is now doing with a group of other students and friends and colleagues of his going back to that time. And there's a really nice transition and development that's occurring as Anandagiri continues to be of service to the world in these high spiritually oriented kinds of ways. So it's really a pleasure to have you on the show again, Anandagiri.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And it's so good to see you again after all these years, you know?
Good seeing you too.
Yeah. We've had so much fun together, you know? When you're in a context like that, you get to know each other, you know, rather well.
Yes.
Sometimes verbally, sometimes just telepathically, you know, because you're sharing a field together, a field of love, a field of vision, a field of hope, and of inner wakefulness, really.
Yes.
So it's glad to have you.
Thank you.
So tell me, things have moved on, as I said in the introduction,
Yes.
and many people know about Oneness University, and now more people are getting to know about your academy. Tell us what it is you and with whom you're doing what you're currently doing.
I now serve with an organization called One World Academy, which has been founded by a very young couple called Krishnaji and Preetaji.
And that is Bhagavan's son.
Yes.
And his wife?
And his wife.
Oh,
Yes.
lovely. Okay.
Yes. And the vision of One World Academy is to really help create a new generation of conscious, compassionate, and happy individuals who would participate in creating a conflict-free world. And we believe this could really happen if one lived and acted from a place of awareness. Somebody who chooses to live a life of awareness. One sees so many things that one has not seen before. In this awareness, you realize the interconnectedness of all life. You realize that we are one and not separate. In this awareness, you see how all suffering that we experience, the inner suffering, any form of psychological pain, be it fear, hurt, anxiety, stress, it's nothing to do with the situations outside. It's more to do with the meanings we attribute to our life situations.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a huge step forward.
Yeah.
When you realize it's not my life conditions, but the meanings I give to my life conditions. Then you stop blaming. So you realize that all suffering that you experience is a result of your own thinking process. Nothing to do with the conditions itself.
Well, the conditions themselves will trigger different aspects of one's own psyche. And because everything is interconnected, I fully understand and appreciate your point, and it's critical to spiritual development and to psychological development to recognize that we are responsible for our own suffering. I mean, of course, that's what the Buddha basically said. His whole life work was about that,
Yes.
among many others. Spiritual teachers. At the same time, interestingly, if we are interconnected with everything, we're also interconnected with the conditions. Could you speak to that?
Yes. Let us look at it this way. Let's ask a question. The happiness or unhappiness we experience in life, is it to do with our life situations, or is it determined by our responses to those life situations? If you observe the world we live in today, we are nearly 7 billion people, in fact more than 7 billion right now. And among the 7 billion there are millions of people who are extremely well-to-do, who have all they need in life, but are not very happy. That is one possibility.
Mm-hmm.
The second possibility, again there are millions of people, very well-to-do, but who are happy. It's not that if you're rich, you're going to be miserable. That's a myth.
Right, it's not by definition.
Yeah,
Right.
you can be rich and you could be happy, you could be rich and you could be unhappy. The third possibility, there are millions with very little or nothing,
Mm-hmm.
the poor people,
Yeah.
and who live in a very unhappy state. The fourth possibility, again there are millions with very little or nothing,
We're very happy.
who are very happy. The fifth possibility, there are millions physically challenged, suffering from chronic illnesses, blind, mute, and who complain about it, who live in a very miserable state,
Mm-hmm.
mental, emotional state. The sixth possibility, again there are millions physically challenged, suffering from chronic illnesses, but who are very calm and peaceful. If you observe these possibilities, these are just naming a few possibilities.
Very true.
Identical life situations or similar life situations, but diametrically opposite
That's right.
experiences. One of happiness and another of unhappiness. One of peace, another of conflict. Looking at these situations, it raises a significant question. The happiness or unhappiness I experience, my inner state of being, is it really determined by my life situations, or is it something else that determines my inner state? Because if you observe this, identical situations but different experiences. Therefore, it is quite obvious that it is not the life situation, your life condition, that determines your inner state. It has to be something else. And if
We
you
see that it doesn't define
yes,
based on all that you said and based on what we know.
yes,
Because we've all met people in every one of those
Yes.
six
Yes.
stages. And in fact, we are in one of those 6 stages.
yes,
So it's true that one doesn't mean the other. So what you said earlier about what defines what or what determines what equals what, so to speak, needs to be broken down. It's about how we and to what we attribute meaning,
yes,
or from that point of view, authority,
yes,
so-called over us.
yes,
But what is that relationship still between the outer world, if you will, and the inner world? Because at the end of the day, if we are in some way, Anandagiri, our brother's keeper, so to speak, and we see that there's so much suffering in those other stages, what can we do to help alleviate that suffering?
I think it's important that we make a distinction between problem and suffering.
Mm-hmm.
Problem is related to the external world and it's caused by external factors.
Mm-hmm.
Suffering is always a choice. It's a result of the meanings you give to the problem or to that particular condition.
Yes.
It's a result of the questions you ask. It's a result of the stories you're telling yourself about what's happening outside. So while it may be true that all of us living this world do not share the same equal opportunity to be equally rich or equally well-known or to live equally comfortable lives. Nevertheless, we all share the same equal opportunity to be happy, because happiness is not dependent on our external circumstances. So if you're asking the question, how do we address our suffering? You don't have to resolve your problem to be free of your suffering. While your problem is still there, while the challenge is still there,
Sure.
you can still be free of that inner pain. And that can happen if you became aware of that pain. There are two ways we can respond to our pain, the pain that we experience within, or the discomfort or the disturbance. One, the moment you sense that pain, the disturbance, you could distract yourself from that pain and disturbance. You can run away from it.
Escape.
You can escape, or you can manage that pain by engaging yourself in some activity, physical activity or
So-called
mental
in
activity.
psychology, we talk about that as sublimating.
Yes,
It's displacing, if you will.
yes. Or
Or
the other option is, if you're not interested in just managing it, but dissolving that pain
yes,
and finding that peace and freedom, you bring your total attention to the pain that you experience, to that fear, to that anxiety, to the discomfort. And as you bring your total attention there, you see something extraordinary. And what do you see? You see this pain is not caused by the situation out there. It's not the person who's responsible for this pain. It is not the situation that's responsible for this pain. It's not the world out there that's responsible for this pain. It's not the system out there that's responsible for this pain. It's not some unseen force that's responsible for this pain. But it is the stories you tell. It is your own thought processes, your own questions, your own meanings that's responsible for this pain. It's nothing to do with external. As you see this, as you become conscious of this, aware of this, it's my own thought process, my own questions, then you stop blaming.
right.
When you stop blaming, you are already free. Then you are no more struggling to change the other in order for you to feel better. Right now we believe, since the other is responsible for my pain, only if the other has changed will my life become better. That illusion is gone. You realize,
The whole if-only model
yes,
dissolves with that inner process of seeing.
yes,
In other words, you're in the mode of psychology, we say, we own the projection,
yes,
that there's an actual projection, and in fact, even the physical eye-brain connection projects, it turns everything upside down. It sounds funny, but we see the world, in a sense, inside out, instead of the way it really is, so to speak. And we see everything upside down, but our mind flips it. I'm just using those in a sense as
Absolutely, yes.
analogies to everything that you're saying, that there's actually a biological correlate to it, which just makes it particularly interesting. Yeah.
So, coming back, there is something extraordinary about observing oneself. Like J. Krishnamurti mentions, if only one can live in observation of one's actions and one's reactions, it is possible to live a conflict-free life, a life of love, a life of compassion, a life of joy. We have a choice,
Yes.
and it's a choice we'll have to make. It's a conscious, deliberate choice we'll have to make. Do we want to live a life of unawareness, meaning a life of habit? Or do we choose to live a life of awareness? What does it mean to live a life of habit?
Sure.
Our life is, if you ask the question, what is life? It is hundreds and thousands of events of all natures, where you are loved, where you are not so loved, where you win great friendships, where you lose your friendships, you achieve, you're successful, you fail, you're respected for your good work, and you're rewarded for your good work, or your good work gets unnoticed, does not get recognized, you're misunderstood, you're appreciated. Hundreds and thousands of such events. And there's a particular way you are reacting to each one of these events. Depending on how you responded to that event, depends the quality of your life, right?
Mhm.
In other words, life is all about how you respond. You cannot alter or change all the situations, but you have the choice to respond.
That's right.
And what determines the quality of your response is how aware you are or how unaware you are. If you are unaware, habits keep driving you. You respond to the same story, same judgment, same blame. But in awareness, you have the choice to respond differently from your usual habitual reactions.
Some people say, Anandagiri, that even when at that moment of becoming self-aware and entering the moment of emotional pain, let alone physical pain, it can be both or either. Even when bringing fullest attention to that, there isn't necessarily the dissolution that you're speaking of. And the pain continues. It doesn't dissolve. We would like it to dissolve. But I have had clients, among others, friends and others, who will say, I gave it my attention. I entered the space of the pain. And it continued. And they did not necessarily have the insight that allowed them to see that it's not originating from the outside, but from the inside.
Yes.
What do you say to that?
Yes. It's very true many times. I have come across such situations too, where people
I would say that it's common, actually.
Yes, they bring their attention to the pain. And when we say bringing attention to the pain, it's not engaging in that pain. It is more observing the process of that pain. What is that pain? And as you observe the pain, it is a process. It's a thought process.
Mm-hmm.
As you observe
So you're saying getting underneath, behind
Yes.
the thought process, the thing that generates it in the first
Yes. Now, there is no emotion independent of a thought process.
Correct.
While it appears to us that emotions are absolute, they're substantial, if you actually observe your emotions, there is a thought process involved.
That's right.
Which thought process is a story, is a question, is an obsession, or meaning of some kind. And if you observe this process, not trying to feel that pain, but if you observe this process,
Exactly.
then you realize, goodness, this process is my pain.
Yes.
It's not the situation. It's not what my mother did to me 10 years ago or 15 years ago that causes me this pain. It is
Right.
my stories, my interpretations.
My interpretations, exactly. It's what may have gotten initiated through what happened 10 or 15 years ago.
Yes.
Or even back further.
Yes.
Or even in the womb, prenatally.
Yes.
There are things that happen,
Yes.
and we are the ones who connect the dots.
Yes.
And attribute meaning. At the end
Yes.
of the day, we are meaning makers.
Yes.
And where we attribute that is where we get primarily suffering or
Yes.
potential joy. So since we're the authors, if you will, we can construct the universe as we see fit to be of service to our own psyche and to others.
Absolutely. And this magic can happen only if you're aware, if you choose to live a life of awareness. Not only this, in this awareness, you realize how connected we are to each other.
Indeed.
And you experience a transformation in your thinking and in your actions. Right now, most of our thinking and actions are founded on the belief that we are separate individuals.
Mm-hmm.
But if you reflected on any of your life situations or any of your life experiences, you would realize that there is not one moment in your life that is independent of the rest of the world. It's like literally every second, the whole of human civilization, the whole universe is flowing into all your experiences. You don't exist without the world. You're inseparable from this world. And this you would realize when you're aware, when you're observant of yourself, of your experiences.
That's right, that's right. Now let's take this into the world on another level. Not only do we have a lot of suffering in the world among people because of confusion about these kinds of matters, because everything is attributed outwardly as the cause of my suffering. We also have groups and systems and institutions that further corroborate that idea. And people who have ganged together to control others in different ways. And I'm referring to political systems, economic systems, religious systems, different social systems that have the control even of law and can legislate who can do what, where, when. And now at the bottom of it all, of course, if a man is free in his own home, or he is in a prison cell, say, he can still be inwardly free. We're agreed.
Yes.
However, happiness and inner freedom is not, I'm suggesting that we take a look at this, the only freedom. Because if everything is really a continuum of inner to outer, there's no separation between inner and outer. There's one freedom that lives in both places. So how do you then deal with, let's say, things that are going on in which people are being identified, let's say, as a terrorist or something of that sort, and they're being fingered and sent to some kind of detention, and even if they're inwardly happy and they willingly say, oh yes, sure, take me, but their life conditions changes so radically, they may be happy, but that happiness is still going to be affected by their outer condition as well, because inner and outer are not really separate. Because when you do the inner observation, you see that among the other things you see.
Yes.
So what do you say? Was that clear?
Yes, I think I got the question.
They appear as separate, inner and outer, but they're not.
Yes, they're not, yes.
And a person can see that they are responsible for their suffering or their happiness. And how do you say that life conditions don't affect that state?
As we were discussing earlier, it is evident from observing the world that there are people whose conditions have not affected their state. So it is possible. If conditions are going to determine our state, if that's the only cause, then where is the hope? There is no hope.
Yes, I understand.
Now, recently we visited the Gulf states in the US because there is crisis happening all the time. And the reason we visited the places, when any such crisis happens, there is so much fear, despair, insecurity.
Sure.
And people are waiting in a hope that someday those conditions would change.
Mm-hmm.
And when those conditions have changed, that they would regain their happiness. The question is, what if those conditions didn't change?
That's right. They're
Does it
caught in the
Does it mean they'll have to live in misery forever?
if when, right, sure.
If it's going to take another 10 years for conditions to change, does it mean then for another 10 years they'll have to live in misery?
I got the story. because we're almost out of time, I do want to make a jump and you'll
Yes.
tell me. Because we're interested in creating a world that is sustainable and joyous and harmonious among all people,
Yes.
and that we are one with nature in a way that we are respecting her efficiency and her resources, whereas you could say right now we're not, by and large. How do you create a world if everyone's in jail in some way,
Okay.
outwardly?
Okay. I'll try to put it very briefly.
Yes, okay.
Every time we are disturbed, we're in some kind of a pain. We react to that pain by asking the question, when is this world going to change? Or why is this world so bad?
Mm-hmm.
Why is there so much self-centeredness? Why is there no love? Instead of asking the question, when is this world going to change? And waiting for the world to change.
Mm-hmm.
And if everybody is waiting for the world to change, it's never going to happen. Instead, a better question would be to ask, what can I do to make a difference to this world? Then you are not waiting for the world to change. You are acting on it by changing your own state, by transforming your own state, by moving to a better place, from moving from a place of inner conflict to a place of calm. Once you have done that to yourself, you are already affecting the world.
There it is.
Individual transformation cannot be separated from world transformation. The individual is the world. If the world has to change, the individual has to change.
God bless. That's it. It's a fractal relationship, as we say, in a micro macro, and there's no separation. I told you.
Yes.
Nor is there between you and me after all of these years.
Thank you.
Wonderful. It's my pleasure, Anandagiri. Thank you for this good work. It is obvious that this is the basis of the work of the Academy.
Yes.
So, carry on. It's beautiful. Well, this is Mitchell J. Rabin for A Better World. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. It's just a pleasure to reconnect to the wisdom and intelligence and heart full of love of Anandagiri and the work that he's continuing to do in this world. Thanks so much for joining us. Make sure to get in contact with his website and the work he and his colleagues are doing, and I look forward to seeing you all next week.